Very good evening to you all. I'm Dr. Pawan Yadav and this is Dr. Shivaraj with me. We are the pulmonologist at Aster RV Hospital at Bangalore. Today we are here to discuss regarding the ongoing pandemic of COVID-19 which started in December of 2019 from Wuhan, and it has gone across the globe. It has reached almost every country in no time. So we have many challenges here at home in India as well. So the most important question that we are facing today is, when do we relax this lockdown? How do we come out of this, and what are the lessons to be learned from the pandemics which has happened in the past and with the ongoing pandemic as well? So let's go through a few of the examples from across the globe and try to learn a few points and make some strategies and plans to deal with this current situation.
Sir, as we all know that the corona is spreading like a wildfire across the globe.
Yes.
So, is there an end to it? So,
however, the challenges in the past were different. So in the past, the challenges were the non-availability of the proper healthcare, the non-availability of the vaccines and the treatment per se. But today's world situation has changed. With the increasing the technological advancement and the increase in the betterment of the global economy, so people from any part of the world can reach other part of the world, the distant most part of the world, in no less time than 20 hours. So the spread of the virus can happen so fast and so rapidly that the disease arising from any country, for example, the Wuhan virus which arose in December 2019 has gone to different parts of the world in no time. These are the different challenges that we have. So how is this pandemic different from other pandemics, and how do we assess the severity of the pandemic? So there are different criteria which needs to be understood before discussing as to how different this pandemic is. This virus has been named as the novel coronavirus or the COVID-19 virus, and this was identified in December 2019. So the Chinese, after identifying this virus, they identified the genome of the virus, and this genome was sent to different countries across the world to understand and do different types of research. From this research, we have got to know multiple factors. So one of the important factors is something called as the R0. R0 is called as the basic reproduction number. What does it mean? If one person is infected with this virus, what is the possibility of him infecting other people surrounding that person? So, for example, if somebody is infected with measles, the R0 or the basic reproduction number can be as high as 18. Then one person can infect as many as 18 people. But in case of COVID novel coronavirus, the reproduction number is said to be between 1.5 to 3.5. On average, between 2 to 3 people can get infected from one person. Okay, this is very important. If the R0 or the basic reproduction number is 1, then the disease usually fades away. It usually doesn't spread so fast as the way the COVID-19 is spreading across the world. This is first point. Second thing is something called as a doubling time. In the recent times, the Indian government is trying to explain as to how the pandemic is dying away in India. The initial doubling time was around 3.5 days, and now it has been extended to as much as 10 days. Okay, 10 days. So what is the reason behind that? That means something we are doing good, right? Isn't it? Some effort which have put all these days in the form of lockdown, social distancing, cough etiquettes, etc. has definitely helped us. So it is helping us in flattening the curve. The way in the pandemic progresses in any given population, the way it spreads from one person to another person, from one the spread happens from one human being to another human being. That is the way the virus spreads. So most important thing here is the social distancing measure. After implementing all of these measures, we have definitely done well so far in flattening the curve and reducing the speed of the progression of the virus. So what are the advantages of flattening the curve here? One, if we have, let's say, an optimal level, if we have certain number of beds, certain number of healthcare facilities which are available with us. So if the virus starts multiplying and if the epidemic starts rising exponentially, ICU beds, ventilator beds, doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals which are available to us, and this will lead to a number of people being devoid of availability of the healthcare facilities, which would be a disaster. So this happened in multiple countries across the world, in Italy, Spain, in US as well. So in order to prevent this overwhelming of the healthcare situation, we implemented the lockdown much earlier in the course of the pandemic. So this has helped us in many ways. We were able to slow down the virus spread. We are able to dedicate more number of hospitals for this situation, and then we were able to increase the number of beds dedicated to COVID, increase the number of ventilators which are available today. So all has been going on well so far. But now the today's question is, where do we go from here on? What are the next strategies? When do we relax this lockdown period? Because we should understand that apart from the COVID itself, there are other health the rates of other problems like anxiety, depression, suicides, and non-COVID emergencies are increasing in number, and that itself can increase the fatality rate, overall mortality and morbidity in the healthcare. So we need to keep this in mind, and there are other things called as the predictable negatives, because if you go into lockdown, the economy will suffer a lot, the GDP stops dropping, and the society on a whole will suffer severely. So what is our exit strategy? And to understand this exit strategy, we need to go across the world to see how other countries across the world have done so far. So starting with such examples, we would go to first country would be Taiwan. Taiwan is the country which is very close to China. A lot of people, Taiwanese people, they work in mainland China. So early in the process of the pandemic, they realized that there is something wrong in Wuhan, and there have been a cluster of unidentified pneumonias which are killing people rapidly. So they identified, they came to know that something severe, there is something cooking up, some pandemic is brewing there. So very early in the pandemic, they decided to close their borders, and Taiwan has a very good national health care system, and they have a health registry as well, national health registry, and this was integrated into the immigration. So any person coming from China were strictly quarantined, and whereas they were strictly followed up. They did initial testings as well, and they did something called as digital fencing. So any person who is kept in the isolation, in the quarantine, was very strictly monitored. They were provided with all the different requirements, basic necessities, including masks for those 14 days. And one more thing that we need to understand here is, Taiwanese population is not under severe lockdown. The schools there are open, and the restaurants there are open. But still, despite these measures, the country is doing so well. They have so less number of positive cases, and even the death rate there is very, very low. And most of the cases in Taiwan are all imported cases. So they have definitely done a very good job as far as managing this pandemic is concerned. So how did they do it? So apart from utilizing the technologies which are available there and integrating these technologies with the National Health Registry, and they have a very strong central command system which is all monitored and manned by people who are trained in healthcare. For example, the Vice President of Taiwan has done his master's from US in public health. Okay, so these people understand the situation much better way. So the point here is that we need to utilize these technologies which are available to us in real-time monitoring of these patients who are kept under quarantine, and they need to be strictly kept under observation and not be allowed to roam around freely spreading the infection, because we lose a track of the infection. In a pandemic, it's very, very important to keep a tab on such issues. The second thing is social distancing and cough etiquettes. So the Taiwanese people are very strict in these measures, and even the schools are open, restaurants are open. They have very, very strict criteria in maintaining the social distancing there as well. So today, if we release the lockdown itself is not a cure for the pandemic, isn't it? So once you release the lockdown, the virus can come back again. Virus can start spreading. One person can start spreading again to another 2-3 people, and another second wave of the pandemic may start. So we need to have these systems in place before relaxing the lockdown. So let's go to the another example of South Korea. South Korea has also done quite well. They also have comparatively less number of cases with less morbidity and mortality. So how did they do it? The mantra for South Korea's management has been testing. So once they identified their first case, they did a very, very tight contact tracing, and they did extensive testing for all the possible contacts. They didn't wait for them to develop symptoms. They didn't wait for them to during incubation period or any other criteria. They just blindly tested anybody who could be a possible contact. And if anybody turns positive, they were kept in strict isolation. And not only these, they use technologies to make sure to follow up these people in real time to see exactly where they're moving around, and they're mapping these viruses. Virus movement was strictly monitored, and using this increased number of their testing capabilities were highly ramped up, And this is the lesson that we can learn from South Korea. So today in India, we have only one type of testing which is available in the form of RT-PCR, which is a diagnostic test. We still don't have good number of antibody testing, which is the screening methodology, which is not made available to us till now. So this is another thing which needs to be there in place before releasing the lockdown in a major way. And we need to have more testing which should be available freely. If anybody has symptoms, as anybody has any doubts, they should be able to freely go there and get the testing done. So the third example in front of us will be Sweden. Sweden is a European country. You all know that how badly the European countries are doing, but Sweden is made a huge difference in their management. They have the number of incidents of the infections are quite low compared to other countries, and their mortality rate also is comparatively low. But I wouldn't say it's exactly like optimal, but still compared to other countries, they are quite okay. So what difference are they doing? How are they managing things differently than compared to other countries? Sweden and UK decided that they would go behind the concept of herd immunity. So what is herd immunity? So the concept of herd immunity says that whenever there is a pandemic, whenever there is a new infection which is introduced into the society, so 50 to 60% of the population should develop immunity to that, okay, to that virus. Until then, the virus keeps spreading rampantly. That is called as herd immunity. So that development of immunity would happen with vaccination or with the spread of the virus to throughout the community itself. Okay, so they didn't implement very strict measures of social distancing or isolation or lockdowns. So what the concept was to allow the people who are not susceptible to this virus in a major way. For example, 80% of the cases of COVID-19 are going to be mild, and most of them may be asymptomatic as well. So, and people who develop the mild, moderate to severe symptoms, 20% of them, in those 20% also, only the most elderly ones are people with a lot of comorbidities and a lot of immunocompromised status would succumb to the virus and go on ventilator and would become severely ill. So they try to protect their elderly and susceptible ones, whereas the younger ones who are allowed to work, and Sweden still have their schools open, part of the schools, and they also have the restaurants open, but with the measures of social distancing, with the measures of isolation precautions, etc. in place. So this is what we have to learn from Sweden. We should understand the concept of herd immunity. So we should understand that that the virus would definitely continue to spread. Just locking up people inside the house is not the cure for this pandemic. And once the lockdown is lifted, the virus can still continue to spread. So today we have divided our zones into green zone and red zone, yellow zone, etc. So the ones with large number of cases, like the hotspots, red zone, should definitely be kept closed. They should definitely be under quarantine and lockdown. But the ones who are under in the green zone, especially, okay, in the green zones, the ones who are more susceptible, like the elderly, the immunocompromised with more comorbidities, should definitely be kept separated from the rest of the crowd. Even though if they are at home without any symptoms, they are more vulnerable. So they should be kept separate, and we should keep them safe. But rest of the population who are like young with good health, young healthy adults, they should continue. They should start going and then start walking, with keeping all the factors in mind in the form of the cough etiquettes, the social distancing measures, etc. And whenever they get sick, like in the form of fever, cough, running nose, etc., whenever they develop these symptoms, they should be educated that they should self-quarantine themselves, and whenever they have doubt, they should get their testing done, and then make sure that they're not infected, and they should not spread the virus to other people in the community. That self-responsibility should be incorporated in all this in people's mind. So these are a few of the points at which we can learn and should be implemented and kept in place before we start releasing the lockdown, so that India is in a better situation to handle this crisis.
Sir, when it comes to testing, we see in our OPD day and night. So even any patient with mild cough also, they come and tell that test for corona. Is it possible to test all the people, and what are the testing methods available in India right now?
Okay. So China, when they identified this new virus, they isolated the virus genome, and they sent the genome copy to all the countries across the globe. And this virus, the COVID-19 virus, is an RNA virus. There are two types of virus, RNA and DNA. This is an RNA virus. The different countries picked up different part of the genome as a target to identify this virus in people who are infected with COVID-19. Okay, so the genomic sequence, which are the targets for this test, the test is called as the RT-PCR, the reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction tests. Okay, this is the most definitive diagnostic test which we have, which is available to us today. Okay, so different countries have developed different kits for this, addressing or targeting the different genomic sequence. So RT-PCR test is not a very simple test. It needs a laboratory assistance. It needs trained people. Okay, it needs laboratories with good backup and good training to implement this test and get the test results. But advantage is that the test results are quite accurate, more sensitive and specific, and compared to the other antibody tests or rapid tests which are available to us. But this cannot be used for the screening method because it takes time. Okay, and we don't have so many number of kits available as of now in India. So the shortcoming of this test is probably the not so freely available. They're not so freely available. Second is the turnaround time is quite high. So the second group of tests which we have is called as the rapid. When the person is exposed to the virus, the body starts producing antibodies. The initial antibodies will be IgM, followed by later on by IgG antibodies. So today, for example, somebody comes to you. The initial 7 days, the test which needs to be done will be the RT-PCR test, which is the diagnostic test. After 7 days, we start doing antibody test. That is because it takes about 7 days for a person to develop antibodies in his body. And when you do a rapid antibody test, it picks up these antibodies in this person. And if the person demonstrate IgM antibodies in the rapid test, that means the person has been exposed to the virus in the recent time. Okay. And if the person is still symptomatic, he may be still infectious to other, and he needs to be quarantined and isolated. And subsequently, later in time, when the infection, the person develops more and more immunity, he develops IgG antibodies later in time. So when the person is positive for IgG antibodies, that means patient was exposed to this virus in the past and he may be immune to this virus. So there is a new concept of something called as immunity pass or immunity passport, which is being discussed in the West. That means like somebody who has developed IgG antibodies, who is presumably immune to this virus, should be allowed to go out and work in the community with a pass with them. That means they are eligible. Okay, they have developed the infection and they have developed the immunity to the virus as well. So for them to develop another virus infection will be very low. But the challenge here is we don't know how much of antibody level or would be actually be immune, and how long these antibodies would persist in our body. So these are the challenges which we have regarding the testing. So as I discussed, South Korea has implemented this model of extensive testing and they have done quite well. So we also need to increase our capability to do more testing, especially the rapid antibody test, which should be made available. But the problem with these antibody kits will be the sensitivity, specificity, and all are going to be different. So each kit has their own accuracy level, which needs to be tested and which should be known by the user before implementing these tests. And we need to understand the concept of sensitivity, specificity, positive predictive values, and all of these things before utilizing these tests. Because initially there was a lot of question as to why we can't test the entire population, as Dr. Shiva was also asking. We should understand that even though the sensitivity and specificity of the tests are quite high, if the population doesn't have adequate number of incidence or prevalence of the disease in the community, the positive predictive values may be quite low. So we need to understand as to which test is which is optimal in which situation, and that has to be used accordingly.
Sir, can you enlighten us regarding the treatment options available?
So as of now, it all depends upon the person coming with different levels of symptoms. If somebody, as I told, comes with a mild symptom, 80% of them are going to be coming with very mild symptoms. In those patients, if after testing for the COVID-19, and if they come positive, the most important thing is to isolating them or quarantining them. Apart from that, the treatment is going to be based upon their symptoms. Basically, if they have fever, you give paracetamol, antibiotics. If they have body pains and all, you give painkillers. And if they have any running nose, sneezing, etc., whatever the symptoms they have, basically, you are going to treat them based upon the symptoms. Apart from that, somebody who has a moderate condition, like if the little hypoxic or if the oxygen levels in the body are low, if they're little dyspneic, you may have to supplement them with oxygen, and you may have to admit them in the hospital for observation to make sure that they don't worsen rapidly. The third group of patients may be severely hypoxic with a lot of lung infiltrates, etc., with multiple comorbidities and with a rapidly progressing disease, may require intubation and ventilatory support to buy time for them to recover from the illness. As of now, as a specific treatment, we don't have any single molecule which has proven to be efficacious in treating this disease as a curative modality. We don't have any molecule which is available. Nevertheless, a lot of trials are going on across the world. So we have a WHO-sponsored trial, which is called as the Discovery Trial, and we have another trial called as the Solidarity Trial, which are doing trials to see the efficacy of 4 molecules basically. The first molecule is remdesivir, the second molecule is hydroxychloroquine, the third molecule will be lopinavir with the ritonavir combination, and the fourth component will be the interferon beta along with the antiretroviral combination. So we're just waiting for the reports to see which of these molecules would be efficacious and which of them will be helpful in reducing the symptoms and helping in bringing the patients out of this severe condition of COVID-19. And apart from this, we are also working on something called as the plasma therapy. So the ICMR is coordinating the trial in the country. Multiple centers have been enrolled across the country. So we also have to wait for the reports of that trial as well. And plasma therapy may be another option for us, along with the molecule which I just mentioned. And the last possibility would be the vaccines. So vaccines, we don't know. Usually vaccines takes a lot of time, maybe several months before they are developed, tested, and ready to be used in humans. So there are a lot of trials which are going on, phase 3, phase 4 trials are going on, and multiple promising drugs are also molecules are being used as vaccines across the globe. We're just waiting for more information and more reports at this point in time. So as of treatment is confirmed, as far as the treatment, specific treatment is concerned, so we don't have any molecule as of now, as of today, but a lot of trials are going on, and we are really looking forward to those trials to make any positive things coming out of that.
So sir, finally, what would be your advice to the people?
So basically, at this point in time, we have done quite well so far in controlling the pandemic and implementing these lockdown measures. We have flattened the curve, we have slowed down the progression of the pandemic. However, the coming days are going to be more challenging probably, because once you lift the lockdown, all our shortcomings will become very much visible. Okay, so we need to be very, very sure that we continue to keep these social distancing measures, cough etiquette measures, and isolation precautions, etc., very much intact and very much in place to make sure that the virus resurgence doesn't happen, so that there is no second wave once the lockdown is lifted. And second thing is that we need to, as I explained, we need to make more and more testing capabilities to be available, so that whenever somebody wants the testing to be done, it should be freely available. And we need to educate our people that the concept of herd immunity is very well. People who are susceptible to this virus, who can rapidly deteriorate and become sick, so they should be protected, and rest of the people who are young, healthy people can probably come out of the lockdown, especially in people from the green zone, with taking all the precautions as mentioned in this talk.
Sir, let's take some of the questions from the Facebook. We have person Mayur. Sir, to what extent will this affect our regular life and for how long?
See, the regular life means, most importantly, from the healthcare perspective, today majority of our resources are being utilized for treating and isolating, tracking the COVID-19 patients. The other patients, non-COVID patients, like people with cardiac issues, other respiratory issues, neurological issues, psychiatric issues, somewhere down the line they may get neglected, and these issues may start propping up and may may turn to be more dramatic and more severe than the COVID-19 itself. So we need to keep that in mind as well, because we cannot continue the lockdown forever. The second challenge for us will be the economy. All the people from the lower social strata will be severely affected, and so we need to start our economy. We should start releasing the lockdown in a phased manner with all the measures, all the precautions in place, and definitely this step has to be taken, because if you release the lockdown today or tomorrow, and as compared to releasing the lockdown from 30 days from now, so how is it going to make a difference if we don't have these measures in place? So if we have adequate capabilities to cater to the patients becoming positive and severely ill, and if we have all the measures to test them adequately, and if you educated the population adequately enough to continue these measures, then probably you should start releasing the lockdown in a phased manner.
Sir, we have one more question. How long will it take to recover once affected?
So it all depends upon the severity of the disease. Somebody with a mild disease, as I told, maybe some of them may be even asymptomatic as well, and they may continue to spread the virus. Some people may have mild symptoms and may recover in a week or 10 days. Or somebody who develops a severe disease in the form of ARDS and get intubated, going on ventilator, may take prolonged time, maybe a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, etc. So it all depends upon as to how severe the person is developing the symptoms. And it also depends upon the complication which would develop along with the COVID-19 infection itself. Some people may develop secondary infections. Some people may be having cardiac issues. Some people may be having multiple other problems like kidney issues, liver issues, etc., which may be an additional burden in this patient. So it all depends upon multiple factors and the severity of the disease itself.
So one more question, sir. There are a lot of cases reported where negative cases being tested positive later. What would be the reason?
So as I was mentioning, we have different types of tests which are available to us, and the sensitivity, the specificity, the ability of the test to pick up the virus when the person is actually having the virus. That is called as the sensitivity of the test. So there are different types of tests with different types of sensitivity, specificity, and accuracy. So somebody has undergone a test which is not very sensitive, and it might have missed the virus, and then initially it may be reported as negative. So when the rapid test becomes available to us, so all these problems of false positivity, false negativity will all come into place. So somebody may be having all the symptoms of COVID-19, and if you test them with a rapid test, it may come negative. So in that case, you will have to repeat a test with a more specific diagnostic test like RT-PCR test to confirm it. And if you still have a doubt and if it comes negative again, you may have to repeat the test. So it is not the test alone. You have to take it in a clinical perspective, and depending upon the person's symptoms and how sick the person is, and the contact history, travel history, all this put together along with the test results, it needs to be looked comprehensively by putting all these points into place.
Yes, we have some more questions. So what is the future of this virus? Will we have similar viruses disrupting life in the future?
See, pandemics are of regular occurrence. We have seen multiple pandemics in the past as well. So recently also we had SARS, we had MERS, we had Ebola. So multiple outbreaks have happened in the past as well. So similarly, COVID-19 is one such outbreak which unfortunately has become a pandemic spreading to multiple countries across the world. So we can never be sure that there will not be another pandemic in the future. So we have to put all the measures in place. Like for example, Taiwan and South Korea, they learned a lot of lessons from the previous pandemics of SARS and MERS, and they had all these precautionary measures in place. That is the reason why they are today in such a good position to implement these measures early in the pandemic, and they were able to control the pandemic in such a better way as compared to the rest of the world. It's all about being prepared for such pandemics, and I'm sure there will be more such pandemics in the future as well.
I guess that is it. Thank you so much for enlightening us on coronavirus.
So thank you all for your valuable time and attention. So it's an evolving condition, so the more data will keep coming in, and we have a lot to learn, And I'm sure it's a new virus, it's a new condition for the entire world, and all of us are approaching this condition in a different way, and each of us have to learn from other. And I'm hopeful that we will be able to defeat this virus as early as possible, and we'll be able to get on with our regular lives as early as possible. So stay home, stay safe. Thank you all.